Hey guys, it's Sarah, and today I'm bringing to you my least favorite books of 2018. To be honest, there's not that many that I hated in 2018. I'm mostly indifferent to a lot of the books that I read. I give a lot of books 3 stars, but that's just sort of the rater that I am. I don't give many books 4 or 5 stars unless they absolutely wow me, or I think they're so fun, or I have a really good time reading them. And so my Goodreads rating is kind of low in comparison to other people. I only have about 8 books to share with you guys today, so let's just get into that. The first book on this list is an anthology called Toil and Trouble. I think it was edited by Tess, Sharpe, and someone else. I can't remember who else, but I'll put the cover here. This is an anthology about witches, and so there's just a bunch of different very popular YA authors that came together and they each have a different story. I really did not like this anthology. I gave it 2 stars, which was surprising because there was a lot of like representation and diversity, and I was excited to read it. And I also thought an anthology about badass witches would be like a really good time. A lot of the stories were really underdeveloped, or they would have been better if they were like full-length novels, or some of them were just like bad. I just think that the mythology of witches is really hard to compress into a short story, and each of the stories had like a different magic system, so it was very hard to bounce from story to story and keep track of the way the witches worked in that particular story. But there were still other people that really loved this book, so I will say just because of the rep it might be something that you'd want to check out, but I personally just really didn't love it just based on the writing, and just wasn't good. The next book on my list was Daughter of the Burning City by Amanda Foody. I read this really early in 2018, so I was actually surprised when I looked at my Goodreads that I had even read it last year. It feels like so long ago that I read it, but I was really disappointed by this book because I had heard quite a few people on BookTube saying it was really good, and while I'm sure it was good for them, it just wasn't for me. It takes place in a sort of carnival circus situation. I don't know, it's really hard to explain because the world building wasn't really great, but the main character is this girl named Serena, and she is a illusion worker. So basically everybody in this carnival circus thing that travels around has different powers. So she can create people basically with her mind, and they have real personalities and they can talk on their own, and they are a part of her, and she can control them if she wants to. There were just so many illusions to keep track of that they kind of all blurred together for me. But basically the premise is that one of them gets murdered, and she didn't even realize that was a possibility because she thought they were fake people. What I didn't like was the world building. It was really confusing. It was really hard to understand the magic system and why these people had powers. Serena also didn't have eyes at all. She literally had no eyes, but she could still see, and that was not explained. So that was weird. Who killed her illusion was pretty obvious. I guessed pretty early on. I didn't know the person's motives, but I had a big feeling that that's who it was. It just was kind of a weak fantasy book for me. The next book on my list is the first book in the October Days series, Rosemary and Rue by Seanan McGuire. I was very disappointed by this because of who the author is. She wrote the Wayward Children series, which is absolutely delightful. Writing is amazing. Characters are great. I really love that book series. This series is not great. I read the first 3 books. I don't know why, because I rated them all 2 stars, but I just was in a weird urban fantasy trash phase where I just read all this really bad urban fantasy, and this just wasn't good. The world building was really sloppy. It centers on this woman named October, and she is a changeling, which means that she's half human, half fae. Like I said, the world building is just really sloppy. There are so many species of fairy that you're supposed to keep track of, but I just found it really confusing. I also did not really like the writing style. It's told in first person, and I just think October is really annoying, and she's really repetitive with the way she speaks. And let me just say, she should really consider a new job because she's a terrible private detective. In the second book, there is this murder mystery where these people keep getting killed, and she needs to figure out who did it before everyone dies. And then literally the way she figures out who the killer is by process of elimination. People just literally keep dying, and she's oh, it's probably this person. And I'm yeah, no duh, because there's no one left. I think the reason that this series is on the list is just because I had such high expectations. I really just love Seanan McGuire's writing in The Wayward Children, and I just don't know how this is the same author. October Day is obviously more urban fantasy, and it kind of follows the cadence and writing style of most urban fantasy, which can be cheesy. I just realized that I actually have 7 books to talk about, so I apologize for saying 8 earlier. But the next 4 books I'm going to talk about are all books that I read for that Goodreads challenge. So basically what I did was I went on Goodreads and I found a list of the lowest rated books of all time, and I picked ones with big enough sample sizes where I felt it made an impression on how many people hated it, and I read them, and as you can imagine, they were all bad. I just thought maybe there'd be a gem hidden in there, and people just didn't know what they were talking about, and it would be a good book, because a lot of times I like books that other people don't like, so I thought that was what we were gonna get ourselves into. But to be honest, that's not what happened, and I hated all these books. The first book is Four Blondes by Candace Bushnell. This was an anthology by the woman who wrote Sex and the City, the one that the show is based on. Pretty problematic, like it talks really poorly about weight. There's a lot about like eating disorders that's not really addressed or like properly talked about. Like I feel like it would be triggering to someone who is currently struggling with an eating disorder. I could not find the point of any of these four stories in the anthology. Like everyone in it was just like a terrible person, and I just didn't like it. I would say stick to watching Sex and the City if you like that show. Don't read Candace Bushnell's books because they're not good. The next book on the list is The Almost Moon by Alice Sebold. This is the same author that wrote The Lovely Bones. I had always heard really good things about The Lovely Bones, although after I posted my Goodreads video, I discovered that actually a lot of people actually hate that book. But I thought because there was a movie made on it with Saoirse Ronan and everything that like people liked Alice Sebold, but The Almost Moon was so bad. From what I remember, it's about this woman who is like a caretaker for her mom, like in her old age, and she and her mother have a really like bad relationship. They never got along while she was growing up, and she's finally like fed up with taking care of her mother, so she murders her. Like they just like have one of these moments where she gets so frustrated with her mother that she like puts a pillow over her face and suffocates her, and it sounds like kind of an interesting plot, and I will say that the writing wasn't horrible. Like, I feel like Alice Sebold definitely knows her way around writing. I just couldn't get behind any of the decisions that this woman made after killing her mother. Just nothing she did made sense, and she just wasn't very likable, which is fine in the sense that, like, I like unlikable characters, but I like them when I don't like them because of how well they're written, because they're so complex that it's like, I hate you, but I love you. Like, that's what I like about unlikable characters. I just said the word like way too many times. But this character was just annoying. Like, she just made bad choices. She was kind of selfish. There were definitely reasons for her not to like her mother because there's a lot of flashback scenes from her childhood. And her mother definitely like had some mental health issues and that like kind of impeded on her childhood. But her dad also had mental health issues, but he was like forgiven for anything that he did. And I just feel like there are better books out there that explore like dark family situations, and this just wasn't the book for me. I didn't love it. The second to last book on my list is The Emperor's Children by Claire Messud. This is possibly one of the most pretentious books that I've ever read in my entire life. I'm going to insert a clip here from my Goodreads video where I read for you a sentence that Claire Messud wrote that is the longest run-on sentence that I've ever seen in my life. She, comma, who had felt she saw so clearly that it hurt, comma, had felt that the truth, comma, crystalline, comma, was, comma, with Murray, comma, granted her, parenthesis, though not through his help, comma, or anything he did, colon, but just by his presence, semicolon, as though, comma, indeed, comma, he were but a part of her that had been lost, comma, a magnificent platonic epiphany repeated, comma, and daily repeated, colon, this, comma, surely, comma, was love, exclamation, parenthesis, comma, felt, comma, now, comma, that the weight of emotion lay like a veil, comma, a fine mist. I just feel like Claire Messud wanted everyone to know that she went to an Ivy League and she knows her way around a dictionary, because the writing is just so wordy and unnecessary. It's just not a good book. It's basically about all these like socialites living in New York after they've graduated from Brown University. I honestly can't really remember that much about them besides that they're all really selfish and just wander around doing whatever the fuck they want. Imagine just like privilege in book form. Randomly, at the end of the book, Claire Messud turns it into a 9/11 book. Like, literally, we go the whole book just like la-di-da-da-da, all these people living in New York, doing whatever they want because they're privileged white people. And then at the very end, 9/11 happens. The last book on my list is Pygmy by Chuck Palahniuk. Chuck Palahniuk is the same author that wrote Fight Club, so you've probably heard his name before. Pygmy is possibly one of the most racist books that I've ever read. I understand that he wrote it like that on purpose to like make people have a reaction. I got corrected quite a lot on my Goodreads video for being a social justice warrior, for pointing out the things that I thought were problematic about it. But here's my issue. I don't care if you were trying to prove a point. I just think being this blatantly racist is not cool or artsy. Basically, this book is about this character named Pygmy, who what I assume is of Asian descent because of the way the book is written. It's written kind of like how Americans would make fun of Asian people speaking, but like in written form. He has come to America as an exchange student, but he's secretly like a communist spy, and he has this mission to like blow up, like, I think it's the Pentagon or the White House. I don't know. He wants to do something in Washington, D.C. That is just another stereotype that like someone from a communist country would just want to blow things up. Not great. And there's just so many racial slurs in this book from all characters. And then Pygmy himself is even hard to like, because the way he looks at women is he looks at them as receptacles for his seed. That was literally in the book. And so he also wants to impregnate an American woman while he's in the US. Here's the thing, when I posted that Goodreads video, people just would not stop calling me a social justice warrior because I kept pointing out things that were like problematic about the books. And don't get me wrong, I do think that people can go a little too far with like being like, this is problematic and this is problematic. But at the same time, if you're gonna write a book in English already, that just even feels like an offensive thing to say. That ain't it. Chief called and he said that ain't it. Did I use that meme right? I don't know. Watch my Goodreads video if you want to hear more thoughts on these last 4 books. If you want to hear more like spoiler thoughts. But yeah, that was pretty much it for my most hated books of 2018. I didn't have that many this year, and I wasn't that like passionate about them like I was last year. I feel like in previous years I've been like let down by like books in a series, or just been really led astray. And this year I kind of did most of the books to myself by doing that reading challenge. So I did think I did okay in 2018 with the books that I chose for myself, because like I said, I was indifferent to a lot of them. I didn't like absolutely hate them. So yeah, let me know down below what your most hated books of 2018 were, and maybe I'll read them for a reading challenge. That'd be interesting, just like reading my subscribers' most hated books. That's a cool video idea. So yeah, leave that down below. And yeah, thank you all so much for watching. You're all beautiful. Have a nice day.